So again, the good news this week is that two things I want to start off with. One is that Baruch Hashem, I have my notebook. I made sure to daven Marav beforehand. I actually left my house and my whole family asked me, because they went on a hunt in my house, looking last desperate move, doing B'dikas Chametz in my house before Moshe found it in the car. So everyone asked me, you have your notebook? I said, I have the notebook, it's in my hand. Why are you asking me that way, as if I ever forgot it, you know? Right. I left the house and I realized that I didn't have the notebook on me, I had it on the dining room table. So I turned around and went back in to get it. And I said, that was an einish, because you never say, I have it. You say, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem help me till now I have it. Ich hoffe, der Eber steht weiterhelfen, and I hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu will continue to help me to have. Okay, so while that's out of the way, what was the other good news? I forgot. I guess it's a week close to the Purim. That's always good news. Okay. Somebody told me that he was by a Weight Watchers, one of these meetings, you know, the Overweight Anonymous or something along those lines, where people get together and they begin to discuss. And he said, one of the people that were talking said that he read a report that if a person overeats, it can affect his hearing by up to 20%. And everyone started arguing, it's true, it's not true, it's not true. One guy in the back kept saying, what? 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 I guess he kind of proved it. Okay. So, you see, in life, we see what we want to see and we hear what we want to hear. You all know the famous story that's brought down in the Midrashim, actually, I think, over a person that was roaring drunk. He was not, and the kids were so embarrassed. And once his children were walking and they saw a drunk laying on the street, and he was not in good shape, I don't want to describe what he looked like, and they said, Father's sober for the moment, let's bring him over, he should see what it looks like. So they brought their father over, and he looks at this guy laying in his own, on the floor, and the father goes, wow, wow, and the kids are saying, the father goes, what? Good. Where did you get that? Polish Zex and Mansaga, you know what I mean? Johnny Walker Red, where did that come from? He's like, we see what we want to see. As I often tell you that word from Rav Freifeld, that he once came in Purim, the place was rocking and rolling, and there were a couple of empty bottles of Johnny Walker and Jack Daniel. He said, that's tight Shnei Goyim Bevitnech, he said. Okay. Now, we see what we want, we hear what we want. That's basically what it is. So, the emes is, the only way to really see or hear the right thing is you have to go back a step forward and establish what our goals are in life. If you want the right thing, then you're going to see the right thing. If you want the right thing, you're going to hear the right thing. So, I passed by a classroom, and every once in a while I listen to these conversations kids have sometimes. This was an interesting one. One of them said, if you were like saying goodbye to your parents for the last time, that his mom is like, saying goodbye, everyone, like it's all over, what would you say to your father? I was like, whoa. And I didn't remember what the different answers were, because I was talking to someone else. But I overheard one kid say, I would say, please, don't come to me in any dreams, okay? Leave me alone. You know what I mean? I was tempted to go into the classroom and tell them to sit down and give them a schmooze, but it was not my classroom, so I opted to stay out. So I mentioned this to somebody, and someone told me that there was this kid in Bnei Brak, in Cheder, and he asked his Rebbe a kasha. He said, how come the Shvatim were only angry at Yosef? They were jealous of Yosef. How come they weren't angry at Yaakov? Yaakov was the one who showed the favoritism. They should have been jealous at their father. They should have been angry at their father. Why did they only vent their anger at their brother? He said, such a good shaila. He went into Reb Chaim Kanievsky to ask the shaila. When Reb Chaim Kanievsky, heard the shaila, he said, I can tell that this shaila came from a kid from this generation. He said a kid from the previous generation would have not asked that question. We have a certain mahalach like we don't want to hear. I don't want to hear what I don't want to hear. I don't want to see what I don't want to see. Don't tell me what to do. And please leave me alone. So don't come back to me in a dream. Everyone sees what they want to see. The famous story, they say that Famous story. The Gemara says that Yonis ben Azil, he learned with such a bren, learned with such a fire, that a bird that flew over his head went up in flames. So Gemara says 3 people learned this Gemara, and each one had a different understanding. One of them said, "Shoo, I wonder if he has been mazik, if he has to pay for the bird." And somebody else learned the Gemara and said, "What a slavus, learning with such a bren, the bird burns up." And someone else said, "What a roast." Can't just imagine. Just like that, right there and then. Now really the joke goes, it names the type of people that said each, but we left that out. I didn't say Hungarians, Galiciana, because that would not be nice. I let you to apply it to whomever it is necessary. My friend Jonas Schwartz, the great Batchen, he goes, as by mitzvah tansia, you call up like 10 people together, all the different families, the brothers-in-law. So it used to be, Baruch Hashem, it's getting a little bit better. But it used to be like for each brother-in-law, you'd call up and you'd give this whole hesped, on and on about how great he is and what he does and what he accomplishes for Yiddishkeit. So then this guy's insulted, that guy's insulted. So he once did it this way. I had to tell him to call up my brothers-in-law. He said, I started telling him what you should say about him. He says, I know exactly what to say. He says, okay. So he gets up and he does in his own grammar and he goes, and we have over here a Talmud Chacham, a Tzaddik, a Magid Shir, a Bal Chesed, a Ganef, a Oizvorf, a Behema, a Russia. We also have Chaim, Beryl, Moshe, Zanval, and Yankel. Everyone come up and everyone apply, each one, to whatever you think belongs to this guy. That's all. Just all come up here and dance together. Why, I should start telling you who's who? You figure out who's who. We see what we want to see, and we hear what we want to hear. The Tzaddik Ramosha Leib of Sassiv, yesterday was his yahrzeit. So the Ramosha Leib spent his whole life for Pidyon Shuyim. That was redeeming prisoners was his thing. There was nothing more important to him. He could not sleep. And he often put himself into a tremendous sakana and grave danger. And there was the terrible gezeira of the Kantaristan where they grabbed Yiddish children and they dragged them off, and there was the Haskalah was behind this, and the Tsar dragged them off into the army for 25, 30 years, never to come back, never to have a chance to come back and get married. When there was a Chas and Kala, a Yosem and a Yisayim that was supposed to get married, and they grabbed the Yosem. They grabbed the Yosem, and they were taking him off to the army. They didn't want to hear that he's a chassan. They didn't want to hear anything. And Ramosha Leib risked his life. Went to the general, and the general threatened, "You come back one more time, I'll kill you." And then he overheard that the guy was not in a good mood because of a gambling debt, and he went in there and offered to pay up the debt, and he threatened. Oh, I'm not going to get into the long story now. But at the end was, the Kala fainted meanwhile, and they said that she was going to die from tsar and pain. Okay. And he managed to put the Chas and Kala back together with great risk to his own life and taking upon a tremendous, huge financial burden. He did whatever he had to do. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. Ramesh Lev Sasiva moved mountains. And he was dancing by this Chas and Kala, dancing by the chuppah late at night, and the klezmer band, in those days the klezmers used to pass from place to place, and they were playing, and Ramesh Lev stopped for a second. He said, "I wish I can go into Gan Eden with this nigga now." That was his hergeshim, that was his feelings at that moment. Ramesh Lev Sasiva passed away, Dalit Shvat, about 200 years ago. So the Olam is crying, they're standing around in the Beis HaChaim, they're about to lower the Mita into the ground, and suddenly, boom, the gates of the Beis HaChaim break open, and this klezmer band comes running and flying, playing music. You can imagine, what's going on over there? And the poor guy, the head of the band, says the horses went crazy. He says, we were playing someplace, and all of a sudden, boom, the horses took off, and we're here. I didn't mean to do this. I don't usually play by Levias, he said. So suddenly, someone said, wait a second. What was that niggin you were playing? And they said, it was very strange. One person said, chutzpah, the other one said, take it out of there, and someone said, what was that niggin you were playing? What's with you? He says, that's what Ramosha Leib said he wants to go to Gan Eden with. Ramosha Leib Sasiva said he wants to go to Gan Eden with that niggin. So they created a bezin right then and there, and they said that they're going to do something very strange under the circumstances, but they allowed or even asked the band to continue playing. It was the first musical levaya in the history, probably, of Klal Yisrael. Levayas are not made to be pleasurable. Although they say the Kotzka once went over to someone who said this real
knakadika hesped by a levaya, which he obviously prepared for many weeks beforehand. You know, when he walked out, all smiles. So the Katzka said to him, remember, the halach is a mess, is asr b'hano. You know, that a dead body, not allowed to derive pleasure from it. But now, Rav Moshe Sasova saw this moment in his life. This was his ultimate craving, pidyon shvuyim. That's what he lived for. Many different stories in his life. There was nothing that meant more to him. He saw a pidyon shvuyim. In every tzar, he saw the possibility of getting that person out. To him, that was the ultimate reality. And there are picture moments in our life. We discussed this beforehand. You sometimes see pictures of Gedolim, and they're like very famous pictures. That famous picture of Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe is pointing with his finger. He's pointing at a sefer, or at a mishnayos, and his towels and tefillin. It's the cover to his book. It's the picture of everything. But you can tell Rav Moshe does not realize they're taking a picture. When he's looking at it, they don't realize that he's taking a picture. You know, he's totally engrossed in that mishnayos. So just imagine whatever was going on in Rav Moshe's mind, right? The Tzaddik Hadar. And he says, no, stop everything. He's just concentrating on the Mishnah. And right there and then a picture is taken, and that is the picture that's going to be on the book. You know, reproduced probably more than any other picture in the frum world. It's that moment in your life that you don't even realize it. You're going to come up after 120 years, that's going to be the niggin. And we don't know when that moment is. I told you this once before. I said this story, and a man came over to me. He was going through a difficult time. He thanked me for that analogy. And he said, by the way, he said, I am the one that took that picture. He said, and he took it. He had a little hole in his talus and a tiny camera. This is well before you had cell phones taking pictures. And he snuck it in, he said. He said, we're going through his mind now. He says, that was my picture. We have to think. You have to look ahead. When you want to know how to look at life, remember there's a given moment that there's going to be your picture after 120. It's going to be the picture you go into Shemayim with. Rav Moshe Sasov wanted that moment of pidyon shvuyim, perhaps his most difficult pidyon shvuyim. And we have to view life as, I never know which day is going to be that picture that's going to be on my file in Shemayim forever after. The tzaddik Rav Moshe Sasov came up to Shemayim. Tzaddikim said he refuses to go any weiter until he does pidyon shvuyim in Shemayim. He takes everyone out again. They say, it doesn't work that way up here. So who says it doesn't work that way up here? We do pidyon shvuyim. No, pidyon shvuyim is only down here on this world. As I have told you multiple times, that I once gave someone a ride in my car, and as we were riding, I told him, it's achnosis archim today is very hard to find someone that mamish doesn't have a roof over his head. You give someone a ride, it's mamish achnosis archim, yeah. And then he tried to get out of the car, and he opened up, the handle came in his hand when he opened the door. I said, don't worry, I went around the other side, I opened the door from the other side, the handle came off in my hand. So he had to squeeze through the steering wheel like to get out on the driver's side. And he was a yid, how should I say this nicely, verspreit Yiddishkeit a little bit if you know what I mean. And he had to force his way out. And he turns to me, he says, with your car, not only fulfill achnosis archim, but pidyon shvuyim as well, he said. Okay. So, L'maisa, Rav Moshe Sasova said, pidyon shvuyim. He's getting everyone out of Gehenna. I said, it doesn't work that way. He said, no, I insist. So they asked, the higher court asked, they appealed the ruling, and they were asked like this, was there ever a time in your life that you attempted to do pidyon shvuyim, but you backed off because you were intimidated, or you were frightened by something, or you were scared, or you realized it just can't be done, you gave up? He said, no, he never ever gave up. They said, if that's the case, then you can do it right now. You can take everyone out. Not only that, they said every year, this time of the year, this like beginning of Shvat, there's a big simcha in Shemayim because people are being taken out of Gehenna. Now, I once said this story someplace, and someone asked me a question. He said, that's not fair. I said, what's not fair? I said, that's one guy, eats a treifa pastrami sandwich, and he has to go through whatever he has to go through up there. One guy's watching something which he shouldn't at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he has to pay the price. And this other guy does the same thing, and he has to be there when a Moshe Sasova shows up. You know what I mean? And he gets easy pass. It gets amnesty. He says, that's not fair. How does that work? Another guy that before he died, he asked for a tray for salami sandwich. They said, why? He said, they're going to hit me with no end. He says, at least I want to know when I get to this sandwich, it's over. Like, let me chaperayim this last thing before he goes. So the emes is that it's not a good shiloh, because there are such stories. It says that the Chidah brings this one up to Shemayim. He also said he's not coming out, but he takes everybody with him. There was such a thing. Tzaddikim said that, they're jumping to Gehenna, I'm not going out, but I take everybody out with me. That's why the Shabina Rav said, that's what it means. Rishayim, the wicked ones, afilu bepischei shel Gehenna, even by the opening of Gehenna, einam chayzrim b'tshuva. They don't do tshuva. What does it mean a Rosh doesn't do tshuva even by the doorway of Gehenna? Because they bring the Rosh up there, he thinks he's a shiny Yid. They take him to Gehenna, he goes, I'm not coming out till everyone comes out with me. And they say, hey pal, you ain't coming out, period. That's what he says, Rishayim, afilu bepischei shel Gehenna, einam chayzrim b'tshuva, because they think they're going to take everyone else out. So, BMS, the Ben Ish Chai says this on a different Gemara. He says, the Gemara says Rabbi Preda had a Talmud, he used to have to teach him 400 times, now he didn't understand it, and they didn't medicate people in those days, they just taught them until they understood it. At the end, one day the Talmud, even after 400 times, didn't understand. He said, what's the matter? He says, I was nervous, I see you leaving to a siyum. So he retaught it to him another 400 times. So Baskel rings out, the Baskel, the heavenly voice says, Rabbi Preda, what would you like? Do you want to, you and your entire generation should go into Olam Haba? Or do you want to, what was the other choice? Or the other lives 400 years. So he picked him and his entire generation, so they gave him both. So the Ben Ish Chai says, what does it mean, him and his entire generation? He says, understand something. In Shemayim, there is no Zman. Okay? There's no past, present, or future. Him and his entire generation means, and that really answers this kasha that the person asked, is let's say you have somebody else that had this patience. He sat down to learn with someone. He saw a kid on the street, he said, how would you like to learn with me Shabbos afternoon? Or he sat down with his own child, and he had all the patience in the world to explain it again and again and again. He comes up to Shemayim, and they have a whole rap sheet on him. You did this and this Aveira. So listen, the Eibush is not Mevater, Koloem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vatuni Vatun L'chayev. There's no can't strike deals. So, okay, you have Yisurim, you have pain that takes off. Even a drop of pain takes off Gehenna. It says even if you put on your jacket and you can't even find the sleeve. You know what that means? Like, you ever had that? You're in a rush and your hand goes into the lining and it comes out and there's no hole on the other end. One of those things in life. After a haircut, there's like you swallow a hair. That great feeling. No cure has been created for that. Those things, you reach into your pocket, you think you lost the key. Oh, I have it, Baruch Hashem. Then or you take out a quarter and instead a nickel comes out, things like that. Every drop comes off from, it's a Gehenna discount. It says, Isha Ra, if someone has an Isha Ra, a difficult spouse, Ein Roya Pnei Gehenna. Right? So you know which story is coming now, right? Guy, we'll do it quickly, so guy comes, we'll get it over with it quickly. The guy goes to the Schachter and then he says, he wants to have kapara from Gehenna. He says, find me the most nastiest person you know. Comes back, he says, I have a girl, she's exactly the opposite of she's nasty, she's mean, she's this, okay, great. So he meets her, she seems nice, I'm worried, don't worry about it. And finally they come into the Sheva Brachas, she's very nice, she's like, don't worry about it. After the Sheva Brachas, she'll go back to normal. The Shana Rishayna, I don't know, she still doesn't let me take out the garbage, she said, only has nice things to say about me, what's going to be over here? Don't worry about it. Finally, it's like in the second year, he doesn't know what to do. Schachter says, I'm sorry, you gave me wrong information, you did a railroad job on me, how dare you do this? So finally, the Schachter, he asks her, he asks his wife, he says, I heard, I don't understand. She says, I know. She says, I know why you married me. And I want you to burn, she says. You know what I mean? I want you to, okay. So every drop, by the way, it's not only an Ishara, it goes both ways. A husband for the wife, same thing. Just the Gemara uses it, expresses it in that way. But the point is, every drop of Yisurim takes off from our Gehenna. But you have to have those Yisurim. Like the Helig original said, the guy comes up to Shemayim and they take every tsar he ever had, every parking ticket he ever had, every time he got yelled at he ever had, every pain, every fright, and he sees, whoa, it's evening out, as Averas mitzvahs, and he just runs out a little bit more Averas than mitzvahs. He goes, we don't have any more Yisurim. He turns, he goes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rav used to say this, you're such a Baal Rachmim, you couldn't hurt me a little more. You do this to me. But let's say a person's Yisurim runs out, no more Yisurim, and they say, listen, we're taking it again. So there is such a thing where he becomes B'nai Doresh or Rav Preda. In other words, a Malach comes along and says, look, it doesn't mean chronologically he was in the same generation as Rav Preda. It means that during his life he had a similar Mesiras Nefesh, patience with people. And therefore, Rav Preda, by extension, has a right to take him out of Gehenna. So when it says, Rav Moshe Leib Sasav took the people out of Gehenna, it doesn't mean those that were chronologically there. It means those that were talking about Nefesh themselves for Pidyon Shvuyim in any way whatsoever, or the other chesed that Rav Moshe Leib Sasav did, automatically connects to the tzaddik, same as with the Bach and so on. Agav, it says that a person can be over certain averis that creates a block, whereas the tzaddik can't take him out. For example, it says if a person speaks nivel peh, mamikim like Gehenim, they make very deep Gehenim for him. The Ben Ish Chai says, what's the difference? Deep, not deep. It's the same room, same thermostat said it the same thing. So he said, mamikim means sometimes the tzaddik comes into Gehenim and sweeps everyone out. But if you're very deep and you're below floor level, even when you don't get swept out. It only sweeps what's on top. So there are certain things that you have to be careful about. Okay, so again, in the course of our lives, we have to crave for the things we're good at and be moister nefesh ourselves for it. You may say, what's the point? I'm nichshel in so many other aveiros. So chas v'shalom, I'm not giving here a heter to be nichshel in other aveiros. But when your Yetzer Hara comes along and says, I blew it anyway, what's the point of me trying to do what I'm good at? When you do what you're good at, you could connect to tzaddikim and have a shaykhis, and they then have an ability to be able to pull you out. Those learning Daf Yomi, so we just had a Gemara. Gemara talks about it, the shear of being chayiv is writing two letters, one next to each other. So the Gemara says you can write one, not necessarily one next to each other, but if you write two letters on Shnei Kois Le'abayis, two walls of a house, or two different ledgers, and they're not connected, so he's potter. You're not allowed to do it, but he's not chayiv. On the other hand, if he writes one letter in Tiveria and the other letter in Sapori, totally different town, he is chayiv. So the Gemara says, well, here you have two sides of a ledger. I'm not chayiv, and I'm writing the letter in one town, and I'm writing the other letter in a different town, and I am chayiv. So the Gemara says, no, you don't understand. Between the two towns, there's no hefsek. You can bring the two letters together. Mashenkin, if you're writing in one wall, this on the other wall, and they don't connect, You have to cut out part of the wall to connect it. Kumtai Sazai. You can have two things that are in two separate cities, but they're potentially closer to each other than two things that are right next to each other. Yet there's a wall in between. So I remember thinking about this Gemara, really think what the Gemara is saying. You can have two people that live in the same house, there's no shalom bayis because there are certain walls in between them. And you can have two people that are far away, and there's a craving, there's a feeling for each other, and there's a hava achva v'reyus. But more than that, in our avodas Hashem, I wish I could learn Daf Yomi, I wish I could learn Mishnayos, I wish I could daven like a mensch. And every once in a while, we try davening a little and it doesn't go, and we try davening a little later, it doesn't go, and our mind wanders, and we feel like giving up. What's the point? It doesn't work. You don't realize how as long as you remove the blocks, HaKadosh Baruch Hu connects your little spurts of davening, little spurts of learning at different times. For example, it says a person tries to daven all weekend, he just sizzles out. He doesn't get his Shemona Esrei anywhere. It says Erev Shabbos Mincha, you daven a good Mincha, it pushes all the other Minchas through, all the other tefillas of the week through. Because there are certain times you keep trying, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, remove the blocks, and I am going to connect it. If you decide who you want to be, even though you're so far from it, Kadosh Baruch Hu puts it together. So when Eishes Potiphar came to Yosef at Tzaddik and suggested they should be over one of the worst Averas in the world, so what did Yosef say? My stone is going to be on the Choshen, it's going to pop off, because I did this Avera. Not of all reasons not to be over that Avera, it's because your stone is on the Choshen. It's sometimes you can't deal with the present. The present is such overwhelming nisyonos, it doesn't work. But I'm going to say at the end of my life, who am I going to be? You have to look further. What am I craving to? Who am I? And this is an eitzah for all of us. So again, L'maisa in Shemayim, there is no Zman. There's no past, present, or future. In Shemayim, it's judged by who you want to be. And the total rotzen and cravings of who you want to be. You want to be good. You want to be a mensch. Keep trying. It doesn't make a difference how many times you failed, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu will put it together. In Shemayim, there is no Zman. And some people down here don't have Zman either, but in Shemayim, there is no Zman. I remember there was a fellow in yeshiva. He lost a parent, Rahman al-Islam. And he came to shul. He wanted to daven by the 7 o'clock minyan. The 7 o'clock is by him middle of the night. I mean, you try to wake him up at 7 o'clock. Boy, forget it. He doesn't show up before 8:30. Barely out of with his man Krishna, he rolls out of bed. Don't give him that Amid. And remember, one of my Rosh Hashiva said, you'll see, he'll be here on time. He never started davening for the Amid. He walked in every day, clockwork, 7:15. Not a second earlier, but he walked in 7:15. When the 11 months were over, the day afterwards, he was back to 8:30, 9 o'clock. Once he had an eschayvis, he had an eschayvis. If we know what our responsibility is, then the world changes. So, in this week's Sedra, what's the very first mitzvah that we face with? The very first mitzvah is Chodesh is Elechem Rosh Chodashim. It's not technically the first mitzvah. The first mitzvah is Pruruvu, but the first mitzvah that Klal Yisrael gets as a people. Now, how long is a month exactly? Anyone know? We did this last year, right? 29, Yisavram, 29 days. How many hours? 12 hours. How many minutes? 44 minutes. 3 1/3 seconds. No, I'm not calling out the moiled here for Chodesh, but that's how long it is. And the guy in shul that's complaining about this, complaining about that, then the Gabba calls out the moiled, he goes, so what's this like free? Why? What are you making it so early for? Right? He just doesn't stop. So, the moon, from one new moon to the other is, I'm just moving it down a drop, okay? Then we'll move down a drop, it shouldn't spill. Okay. Is 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds. And because of that, life gets very complicated, because Rosh Chodesh has to be at the beginning of the day, so sometimes you have 29 days in the Chodesh, sometimes you have 30 days in the Chodesh, and usually it goes 29, 30, except there are certain exceptions, and there are exceptions to the exceptions, and on top of that, you have the solar year, which is 365 days, and the lunar year, which is 354 days, and the Torah says Chodesh HaAviv, Pesach has to come out in the spring, so 7 out of every 19 years, you have to have an Ibriyar, except not during a Shemitah, because you don't want to have an Ibriyar during a Shemitah, an extra year during Shemitah. So there's never Ibriyar during Shemitah, except once every 36 years, you have to have an Ibriyar even during Shemitah. It's like, Hashem, couldn't you just made it 30 days? You put this ball into rotation, right? You're the one that did it. Why couldn't you just make it exactly 30 days? Why do you have to make it 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds? And the Rabbi is the one who put it into play, right? That's the evolutionist's biggest problem. That the major rule in science, in physics, anything that's in rotation, that's moving, somebody set it into motion. So that's not evolution. Someone said it, there's a Rabbi that set it into motion. Which I learned the hard way once. When I was in yeshiva, so there was a guy who was like a meshgiach in yeshiva, he slept behind the bachim yisuta. We learned late, sometimes Thursday night, raided the kitchen a bit, kedarke v'kodesh of yeshiva bachim. And we used to sneak through the dorm alley to get back home. And he was by that window. And we was try to be quiet. And then I remember once he was in a bad mood, that mashgiach that day. Like they said, he woke up that morning on the wrong side of the stender. They used to say about him. And we were sneaking through the dorm alley. And he had remember the old metal garbage cans? You don't see them anymore. Good, real old metal ones like your grandmother had. So this kid by mistake knocks it over. And the cover of the garbage can, how it goes, it hits the ground and it goes as it's spinning around you like this, and it goes boom, 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 and it sticks his head out the window. He goes, "You Bachrim, you have a mind of your own." This kid says, "Your garbage can has a mind of its own." It's rolled 20 minutes after we knock it over. So anything that is rolling, Kadosh Baruch Hu puts into things. So really, and then the Kadosh Baruch Hu made the world. So why did Kadosh Baruch Hu do it this way? Why couldn't Kadosh Baruch Hu make it even 30 minutes? The metric system, right? Why do we change? So the answer is that Kadosh Baruch Hu did make it perfect. Why do we think that 30 days is perfect? We think 30 days is convenient. What's perfect is the 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds. Our job is to adjust the conveniency to the perfection. That is our job. And I know sometimes we say, don't come to me in a dream. Don't bother me with the facts. But the reality of being down here is, no, life as you see it is not going to be perfect because we don't know what's good. And the Rebbe Hashem has all the cheshbainis. The moon is 225,000 miles away approximately. And the sun is 93 million miles away. And try to think what that means. And the plane flies 7 miles into the air. And if the sun would be a little bit too close to the earth, we would all fry. Too far, we would all freeze. And everything is all the stars, the 200 billion stars. Somebody made a cheshbon. If you count up the amount of stars, and it takes you a quarter of a second to count each star, it would take you 6,332 years to count all the stars, which explains why you can't count stars, because it's longer than the whole duration of the world. Even if grandfather is going to die, and his son is going to take over the counting from where he's up to. So, and all of this, the Rebbeinu Shalom has cheshboned out perfectly. So you little guy, you want to try to understand Kadosh Baruch Hu's math? It's beyond numbers that are beyond your imagination. If one star would be off by a mashu, the world that would cease to exist. That's what scientists say. If anything would be off, the whole magnetic force and gravity and how the world works and the radiation, everything would be off. We would cease to exist. So a chodesh hazeh lachem. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, leave the world to me. Lachem. Your job is to make the adjustment. Okay? Because what's perfect is what is. What's convenient is what we would like. And we have to figure out how to make this work. We have to figure out how to make Rosh Chodesh out of a 29, 12-hour, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds situation. That is our tafkid. And it's precisely designed that it doesn't work perfectly. Because a person makes an attempt at shalom bayis and he gets a hitch, so try again. Adjust. He wants his kids to turn out in a certain way and they're not turning out in a certain way. Adjust. You want to finish Shas and it's not going, bounce back. Keep bouncing back. And even then, all of a sudden, when you have it all figured out, kum tashmita, no, you can't do it. You can't adjust today. Okay, I can't adjust today. No, this year you do have to adjust. That's it. That's what life is. In this world, I met one of my kids' bus drivers. As we know, we have a Gavaldic bus strike here. So the poor guy said, what are you doing tomorrow, Al? He says, you're lucky. You're on vacation. He goes on vacation. He says, you want to stand holding a sign all day? He says, I'd rather drive a bus. Right? We either have tainas, or someone told me a great one, and he was he was taking the driver's permit. Okay? Now, if you ever saw those questions by driver's permit, you have to be brain dead to fail. Okay? Stop sign. Do you go, turn, jump, or stop? Okay. Yield, right? So the person's taking the test, and he sees someone sitting next to him, and the guy's like looking at his paper, cheating. And he notices that it's not the same test. They don't give everyone the same test. I'm not going to tell anything to this guy. Yeah. So when they finish, he gives in the marks, and this guy comes to give in his mark. And they give you the results right away. So they give it back to the first person and say 100. And they give it to this guy and they say 0. He goes, 0? How can it be a 0? I have the same answer as he has. He says, but he has a different test. He goes, you did it to me again! He did it to me again. It did it to me last week, and now he do it to me again. Like I say, you have to get me. In this world, we can either go around with tainas, because to us it looks like everyone's out to get us, or we adjust to the reality. Is it easier to drive or is it easier to strike? I don't know. And no two people in the world have the same test. And therefore it says, HaChodesh hazeh la Chem, Rosh Chodeshim. Chem, it's for you. You all have different situations, and only the Rebbeinu Shalom knows what to do when and how. Only Kadosh Baruch Hu does it, and you have to readjust and readjust. And somebody told me a great story. It was the old tanker of Zechet Tzadik L'Vrach. Once came to a wedding. In the middle of the wedding, another chassan walks in. Who's this? He got married 2 nights ago. Instead of making Sheva Brachas in their first cousins, he's coming to the Sheva Brachas to the Chassan. Both Chassanim will sit over on. Tanker said, no, Ein Ma'arv and Simcha. The Simcha, you can't do it. So we don't have another Sheva Brachas prepared for him. Ein Ma'arv and Simcha, the Simcha, you cannot do it. He got very upset. He said, why can't we do it? Because you can't. Goes, but why can't we do it? Why can't we do it? The Rav said, no, it's no. And somebody said, I saw the Rav when there were 2 Chassanim there. You're very picky about when you want to do things, when you don't want to do things. And he didn't say anything. Later on, he called the father of this Chassan that walked in. He says, you have tainas on me? He says, I'll tell you exactly what my cheshbon. The Chassan that was getting married that night, a great boy. But the Chatzonius, he was short, bent over a little bit, stringy beard. He says, the chassan that got married 2 nights ago was this, nice picture. He said, I'm going to sit these two together, and the kala is going to come in, and she's going to see last night's chassan and her chassan. Is that right? We're human beings. So that's why the night of the chassan, I didn't want it. We understand how we have to adjust and readjust. We have it all cheshboned out, what it means to have bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So someone else tells me this story, that when he got married, he was making a chasana for I hope I get this straight, but you'll help me. He's making a chasana for his daughter, and when is this man chasana? So when your family gets bigger and bigger, it gets more and more complicated. Because you want everyone to be by the wedding, and what if one of your other daughter-in-laws or daughters are expecting a simcha? And being that, although there's a due date, but we don't know when God's due date is, so it takes a little guessing. And then there's certain months people do make chasana, don't make chasana. Then there's the availability of halls. So the bottom line was, he wanted to make his chasana at the beginning of Cheshvan. And he said, and he told me that he had a sibling, that is the father of the Kala had a sibling who was making a chasana that week. I said, no, don't make your the Shriver Brachas, it will overlap. And if it overlaps, what do you think? It's the two wires and it'll explode? Well, it overlaps. It's a big family. We can't. No. So his mother calls up and says, you're making trouble. He says, your sister's upset. I don't want you making the chasana then. He says, Ma, okay, my other choice is to make, if I can't make it a Cheshvan, the next, Tevis wasn't available, she couldn't get any holes. The next time is Kislev. Kislev, one of his daughters or daughters-in-law is expecting a baby. They may not be by the wedding. So push it off to Shvat. Says, my Mechatzim, I don't want to wait that long. So he goes to a Rav to ask what to do. So the Rav says, so either one of your daughters are going to be upset, because she won't be by the wedding, or your mother's upset. How could I answer the Shaila? So he looks at him and says, there has to be an answer in the Torah to everything. So the Rav smiles, he thinks, he says, you're right. Ein sofik moitzi midei vadai. That your mother is going to be upset, okay, if you make it on Cheshvan. If your mother's going to be upset, that's for sure. That your daughter will or will not be there, that's a sofik. So you cannot make it on Cheshvan. Make it Kislev, whatever happens, happens. So he said, fine, he got das Torah. He makes the chasana Kislev. The end of the story was that his daughter that was due on Kislev had the baby 3 weeks early. So both his mother was happy and the daughter was there. You know, the Rabbi Shem wants us to adjust, but sometimes there's a crunch in life, and you have to say, so what do I do? If you're lucky, you have someone you can ask. If not, you have to say, let me do my best. And you may be right, you may not be wrong. But that's how the Rabbi Shem created the world. That's when we reach our ultimate tafkid. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. That's the world. In our lives, nothing is exactly 30 days. It's all 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds. You have to connect it. We have to connect it. Now, Rav Palm said, I'm married to Gevart. He always used to quote a Sefarna. The Sefarna says like this, that the reason HaChodesh hazeh lachem is the first mitzvah, the lashon of the Sefarna, mikan ve'elach yu achadashim shalachem. From this point on, the months are yours. Las ispem kirtzaynchem, you can do whatever you want with the months. Avol b'mei hashibud, when they were in Mitzrayim, l'hoy yemechem shalachem, it wasn't their days. Avol hoy li'avdus achem, but it's if you're a slave, you have no time. Your time belongs to your boss. If you are you're a free person, you have time. Time is the greatest gift of life. What we do with our time, or what we crave to do with our time, is the essence of life itself. Life is time. $1 billion cannot buy a person an extra second when the time is up. Kiddush HaChodesh is how we measure time. Our introduction to Chayros is what our opinion is on time. Our guy's going to say, and if I'm not an Eved, I have my own time, I have to be if I come a second late, know what my boss does to me. If that's called my time, the guy said I would have retired. I saw with the list my wife had prepared for me after I retired, so I forget it. It wasn't worth it. It's not true. Even if you're a free person, this is my goal. Now, part of my goal is I have to take my time, and I have to do what it takes. I have to do what it takes to earn a living. I have to do what it takes to go through the nisyonis in life. And I have to crave in my extra moments. That's not pshat. The time isn't mine. That's pshat. I have to adjust it. I have to adjust the 30 days to the mitzias of life. So Rav Palm used to say like this: if I was investing in a $3 million deal, I would have 10 lawyers and 10 business consultants going over the contracts 1,000 times to tell me if I'm doing the right thing. Yet, did you ever stop to think, what are you investing your time in life in? Where's that going? Are you investing it in your future? Are you investing it in the olam emes, in your real future? The story, the guy was in a mine in Siberia, and I read this. He's in the mine in Siberia, and he goes, there's gold all over the place here. There's no guards. He says, great. Then what are you going to do with the gold? Where are you going? The nearest civilization is who knows how many miles away. There's no place to go with this gold. A piece of bread over here is what life is. You can invest in all the gold in the world down here. You're not taking it with you. What are you investing in that is real, that you're taking with you to the Olam HaEmes? So the Sfas Emes today's is yards that says, Mishchu. Mishchu before the Carbon Pesach. Pull yourself out. Pull yourself out of the world and think, what can I take with me to the Olam HaEmes? I can't take my money. But if I spend 15 minutes, an hour and a half, whatever it is in the base medrash, 10 minutes before Ma'ariv, an hour before Ma'ariv, if I learned with my kid, if I wasn't in the mood of being home, but I went in and I made sure the Shalom Bayis and I sat down and had a pleasant discussion with my wife or vice versa, the other way around. Those moments are priceless that you take with you in Shemayim. You take it with you. Moshe has it all cheshboned out. The Belzerov once said, I'm going to show you how you shlok kaparas. And they traveled to some remote village, and they looked into some drunk peasant that was sitting over there. And the drunk peasant that was sitting over there sat there, and he said, Rabbi Shalom. He said, he takes out two cups of schnapps, fills them up. And then he takes out one pad. He goes, "There's all the Averis I did all the year. I looked at things I shouldn't have looked at. I said things I shouldn't have said. I did things I shouldn't have done." Takes out another pad. He goes, Rabbi Shalom. My daughter was sick this year. My cow died. I got sued. My fence broke down. There was a shotgun blast through my window, and I had this and that. My wife was sick. And he lifts the two things. He says, "Listen, you got tainas on me." He says, "My life wasn't perfect. How's about we make a deal? Well, we mix these two. Put them together. You're meichel me, I'm meichel you." He drinks one cup of schnapps. Says, "Hashem, I'm going to drink for you." Okay? The Rav said, that was the kaparas. That was the kaparas. Somebody once told me, and when you're overwhelmed, there comes a point in your life, you're overwhelmed. I can't return all the calls. I can't deal with the questions I have to deal with the decisions I have to deal with. I'm plotzing. Take out two lists. On one list, say, today I'm going to learn a Daf Gemara, I'm going to learn a Mishnayos, I'm going to learn the Mishnah Berurah, whatever I look at the Shulchan Aruch, I'm going to learn an English Sefer, I'm going to read it, whatever it is you're doing. And on the other list, write all the things you have to do. And say, Rabbi Shalom, I'll do mine, and you help me do yours, okay? Or vice versa. One-on-one. Let it connect. The Chayza of Lublin was the great seer, the Chayza, saw from one side of the world to the other. And every once in a while, when people were lined up, and he would tell them his Ruach HaKodesh answers, break. And they would run in, the Rebbe had a little Mishnayos. They said, "Rebbe, why are you learning this Mishnayos?" He said, "Where do you think my koyach comes from? I have to stop and say, Rabbi Shalom, I'm learning Torah, I'm in your hands. Now give me the Henem Meni Eitz of Teshuvah. Now give me the koyach to answer people." If I don't stop to learn the Mishnayos in the middle, it won't work. So I once sat down, I was talking to one of my Rebbeim, and I said, I have so many things to do today, so many decisions to make, I'm going out of my mind, the stress is killing me. He gave me a Mishnayos. He said, I mentioned this before, and he said, I want you to learn 12 Mishnayos a day. And make a list of 12 things you have to do. 12 calls you have to return. And before each time you make a call, learn a Mishnah. Learn a Mishnah, and say, I did mine, now let me do yours. Now, of course, doing yours means I have to try to make the call and do my best to try to answer in the best possible way. You have no idea how much it relieves the stress. The Lechavitch said, the emes, what are you worried about? This is easier said than done, but in reality, if the Rebbe Hashem doesn't help you, you can't step over the threshold. If the Kadosh Baruch Hu does help you, then you can jump over oceans. So the issue is whether the Kadosh Baruch Hu is helping you or not. So you make a list of the things you have to do for a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then make a list of the things you'd like a Kadosh Baruch Hu to do for you, and put the two together and make a deal. It relieves a tremendous amount of the stress. It's mishchu. I can't solve my problems. I don't know what to answer. I don't know what to do. I don't know which doctor to listen to, which lawyer to listen to, which professional advisor to listen to. I can only listen. I can ask advice. I'll do mine, advice from you, do yours. That's what Shmon Esrei is supposed to be. Whole world, stop, mishchu, pulling away from it. Rabbi Shalom, this world is not perfect as I see it. Let me do mine. You guide me for yours. There's a letter that came out from Rav Osner now, about the importance of closing your phone before davening. And what he comes out there, at least I think it comes out in the letter. He says, if you take the second to close your phone before davening, it's irrelevant if you won't close it. And even you're not going to answer the call. Bring. Okay, no. It's on vibrate. Buzz, 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 buzz. So whether you're going, no. Or even if you're not going to do that, but it's buzzing in your pocket, you're not connected, you're not mishra, you don't pull yourself away from the world and daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, I'm not expecting any calls. If you close your phone, you're making a statement. You're saying, in the next couple of minutes, when I deal with Hashem, I want to first close my phone. In other words, I am mishchel. I am pulling myself away from the world. I am talking to you. I finish davening. Whether you want to, you don't want to. I open my phone. Okay, now Hashem, I didn't mind. You do yours. If you're not closing your phone, you're taking Hashem out of the equation. Whether you get a call in the middle of davening or not becomes totally irrelevant. It doesn't really make a difference. And we don't understand in life how things work and how things connect and how things go. So the Tzver Shloimeh had a chassid very close to him. And there was wars, Russia, Poland. Russia was like a check piece, going back and forth and back. I don't know when they bothered changing the maps. They should have had like 2 colored maps. So this one. And Poland took over. Fine, they charged, he had big granaries and he had big restaurants, and they charge into his place, feed our soldiers, at a sword point. Okay, take what you want, leave me alone. No, they fed his soldiers. Then all of a sudden the Russians came in, and the Russians said, aha, you aided the enemy. You fed them. Because, what was I supposed to do? They drag him out, sentence him to execution. They run to the Tzver Shloimeh, the Rebbe says, nope, talk him in the geld. He says he did this, he lived with all his granaries, he gave for poor people, all his restaurants, he was always feeding poor people. He can't die from it, talk him in the geld. Maybe he just didn't give enough. So they ran to the head of the thing, and they're begging, and they're crying, it's not his fault. He says, fine, I'll take 150,000 ruble. It was all his money, but at least he would be saved. They came back to the Rebbe, they said, no, don't give it to him. Too much, 150. They said, but the Rebbe said, I promise you, all these things, he never had a business separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He never turned down a poor person. He never didn't give Meiser money. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of it. 150 is too much. He's going to get killed, don't worry. All of a sudden, boom, what happened? The Russians came back, they took over, and they sent the Polish out. And they caught him, and he's all tied up. And he says, what are you tied up for? He says, they were going to kill me because I was supporting your soldiers. He became a big hero. He says they took him out, and they gave him the licenses to buy. He became a Gevir Adir. There's so many times in our life is so confusing. Put the Rebbeinu Shem into the equation, and let time solve. You'll see that what you think is not perfect is perfect. And what is perfect is not perfect. And it doesn't mean you have to change the world. You have to make an attempt. Because Baruch Hu didn't. How much are we off by? 29:30, right? How many hours are we off by? Yeah, it doesn't be good. 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds. How much are we missing to a full 30?
11:53.
Right? We're only off by 11:53. Because Baruch Hu wants us to correct a drop. Somebody told me a story. This week he was a soldier when the Arabs took over Kibbutz Yosef Shechem. Remember those in Fatah and they got the orders to evacuate. They said, run for your lives. So he said he felt so bad he wanted to grab whatever chamashim he could, even though they were told not to. Run! And as they ran out, he says he was shot in his foot and he fell to the ground. And he's telling me to this day, he said he has a plate in his foot. He was shot and he fell to the ground. And another soldier stayed there, tried to drag him to the jeep, and they realized everyone left. And the Arabs were coming in from all sides. They said, we're dead. And he said, Rabbi Shalom. The guy was not from my real Shomer at Sawyer. Thank God he's an atheist. He said, Rabbi Shalom. He says, you take me out of, I wish I could say it in Hebrew the way he said it, but he said, you take me out of here alive. I promise you, every Erev, Shabbos, Tshuva, I'll put on tefillin. Boom. That's what he promised. He says, Lamais, they told me they got out of there alive. And he says, every Erev, Shabbos, Tshuva, he goes to the Kaisel, he puts on tefillin. So what does that mean? It means you don't have to put on tefillin the rest of the year. It means that the Rebbe Hashem says, move in the right direction. I want you to make a move in the right direction. So all I'm not asking you to fix the world. Chodesh hazel lachem. It's up to you to make sort of palm said a dove and a murder. We think a month is 30. But in order to have a tikkun, we have to move, keep moving. So the Chavetz Chaim used to say like this. The Rav Palm used to quote him. Ihr meint medav zan from, said the Chavetz Chaim? No. Medav zan klug. You have to be smart. I think you have to be from, you have to be smart. So what does the Chavetz Chaim mean? You don't have to be from, you have to be smart. The Gemara says that how do you know whether someone is a cotton? How do you know he has enough das? A miner has enough to execute transactions and so on. So level number 1 is if you give him something and he can't hold on to it, he's a ma'avid mashin noisnim loy, except for notebooks. But if you give him something and he can't hold on to it, that's a symbol he's a cotton. Level number 2, a higher level is, the Gemara says in Gutten, if you give him a stone and a nut, he disregards the stone and takes the nut, he's on a higher level. Number 3 is, you give him a chayfetz and he understands it was only borrowed and he has to return it after a short time. So Pam said, you realize this is life. Ma'avid mashenoisim loy means a person that his free time takes and throws it away. There's a whole industry in America what you should do with your free time. The next level is he disregards the stone and the nut. It's not always easy to tell the difference between the stone and the nut. Which is it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you want me to do? And the fact that the highest level he understands time is a ticking clock. I have to use it right. It's your time. You use it. And to you it looks like the world is so imperfect, right? I remember Rabbi Yaakov Galinsky used to say, right? The first Mishnah, so in certain cases, one guy gets half a talus, the other guy gets half a talus. So he says that he learned the Gemara when he was a kid. A boy picked up his hand and said, Rebbe, what? He says, if you only have half a talus, how do you put on the tzitzis? There's only 2 tzitzis there. What do you do with it? So he said, you use it for Baruch Sha'amar, the Rebbe told him. Of course, half a talus is... Well, I'm not going to get into that. But the point is, there are times in life it looks like it's only a half a talus. You use it for what you're supposed to. So someone told me that he saw a clip of someone in Pakistan that was about to be executed. For whatever reason, he was being executed. And they were walking him to the gallows. And there was a puddle, and he walked around the puddle. And everybody was laughing. Like, who cares if you're getting wet? And he said something like, as long as I'm alive, I'm alive. I'm allowed to maintain dignity. Every day is a gift. Every day in our life is a gift. The Ber Moshe, from the son of the Kazhin Samagid, the Zohar says a mashal to a melech, that said, before I give over the reins of Malucha to my son, I have to test him. And he hired a Zaina to try to entice him. And she was supposed to do her job. But she knew good and well the Ratzon HaMelech is for him to stay away from the Nisayan. And when he stayed away from the Nisayan, he was given all of the riches of the throne. So he says that's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is that Zaina. Our tithes in this world, and I don't know if there was any generation that was tested the way we are tested, because you can't run away from the tithe. If a person has in his house, then where do you go? And families are being destroyed, and fathers ripped away from children, and children ripped away from even just the time. You know what it means that the father 24/7 is sitting and he's selling. He's doing everything kosher. He's selling things. He's buying things. Hello. I'm alive, but you have a wife and kids. What? Yeah, soon. I can buy a commercial. Oh, no commercials. Sorry. Next Gilgal, We're never so tested. When a person has the Mesiras Nefesh to go over his Nesiyainis, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this is all of our Nesiyainis today, that's the Zaina that the Zohar is talking about. He says, Boy el Paroi. Paroi is the Yetzer Hara. The Mesnagid L'Kedusha, boy, come with me. Ki aniach barati as liboy. The Rabbi Shalom put us in this generation. The Rabbi Shalom put all of the Nesiyainis in this generation, because we are the ones that can grow from this. We're the ones that can grow from this. So there's no buses tomorrow, right? You have to drive your kid to school. So the city's giving 55 cents a mile, right? Good thing God doesn't charge us to send light from the sun. You know that in Borough Park, I would much rather if the city gave 55 cents a minute when you're driving to your shiva in the morning. So, it's today, my wife said, go pick up your... Well, actually, she didn't. I offered to go pick up my daughter. And I said, fine, I'll go pick her up. And then, while I'm there, you pick up your grandchildren, and pick up your this, and pick up their friends, pick up the neighbors. So I realized, I'm a school bus now, This is just what I wanted, like on a Wednesday. So I'm walking I made the last stop, and I'm not very good at figuring out the route. I gotta get one of those programs. But, and I'm in the car, and I'm here with my daughters and my granddaughters, and I'm telling them a story, and then I drop off, my last drop off was my little granddaughter, and I'm taking her home, and I'm walking with her, and she goes, Zaidi, we never get a chance to walk like this. I said, you're right. What am I complaining? I'm complaining. Do I know what a Kodesh Baruch Hu's Cheshbon Yisrael with a strike? Look at it, my life is wasting by. Am I talking to my kids? Am I talking to my grandchildren? The Rebbeinu Shalom gives us strikes. The Rebbeinu Shalom gives us setbacks and puts us into situations. If you only understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Chodesh Hazeh Lachem, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is making the connections. Don't look for things. They say in China, they're leveling huge mountains. It's going to cost like $10 billion, and they're building a city. It's going to cost like $3 billion to level the mountains, another $3 billion to put up all the buildings, but they don't know how much it's going to cost to get people to live there. Don't try to build things that aren't there. Build your own life. Chodesh hazeh lachem. It's for you. And the Sfas Emes says, the Pari didn't want to give in. He didn't want to give in. The world's turning around him. No, the world doesn't need. meet my expectations. So what did Kadosh Baruch Hu do for him? He didn't even have a choice of giving in, and he was virtually destroyed. Kal v'chaymer. If we say to Hashem before the Makkos come, we want to give in, Hashem. Just give us the guidance to know what to do, how to adjust to the difficulties in life, how to correct the Chodesh. So how much more so if Kadosh Baruch Hu did that to Pare, hardened his heart, how much more so does the Kadosh Baruch Hu soften our heart? I want to conclude with this story. And someone told me he went to Eretz Yisrael, and he went there for a family member that was having surgery, a minor surgery. And when he left the hospital, he sees screaming. What's the screaming? They're running with a stretcher. And there's a Yerushalayim, a man and his wife is on the stretcher. Then he realizes she's in the middle of, either she's having a premature birth or something. There's some major complication. Doctors are running into the operation room, and they tell the father, stay there. And so he goes over to him. And he starts talking to him. He says, I went through this. I had triplets, and they were born early, and don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Like, he calms him down. He wonders, maybe this is why I came to Eretz Yisrael. And a while later, the doctors come out. They say, you have a baby. The baby is 3 pounds. We don't know if he's going to make it. So he tells the doctors, hey, I had 2 babies that were 1 pound each, and they made it, okay? Relax. He says he got such chizik from that. So while he was there, he said to himself, that was 13 years ago. Let me go up to the, what's it called, the NICU, the NICU, right. Let me go up there. I was there for almost a year, 13 years ago. I was curious to see what it's like. So he goes up there, and he comes and they ask him, why are you here? He says, just looking around. They said, there's the exit door. He says, no, well, I was here 13 years ago. He says, I was here for almost a year, so it's like bringing back certain memories to me. It's bringing back memories. You were here 13 years ago. The nurse says, was this nurse here then? No. Was this doctor here then? Yeah, that doctor was there. You know what? Stay here. They bring out this doctor, a lady. She says, you remember me? She goes, no. No, remember? There it goes. She looks up the files. Yeah, she remembers. She remembers. You had triplets, 1 pound each, right? You were here almost a year. You were here. Yeah, you and your wife. Yeah. And she goes, 1 didn't make it. Two, the other 2, you're in America. She says, which institutions are they in America? She goes, they're not in any institution in America. They're fine. They're fine. One of them is getting bar mitzvah, and one is they're fine. No, come on, don't play games with me. I'm a professor. I know exactly what their situation was. Which institutions are they in? They're not in any institutions. Here's the picture. She's like aghast. You sure these are the kids? Yeah, they're fine. Fine, normal, healthy kids. She sits down. She says, I got to tell you something. I remember it very clearly. 13 years ago, when they brought these babies up here, I ordered my staff, don't do anything for them. Let nature take its course. Let them expire. And my staff said, why? She said, look at these 1 pounders. They're not going to make it. You're going to put them on life support. They're going to be left vegetables their whole life. Their parents won't have a normal life. They will never have a normal life. Let's let it go. Somebody came in and said, no, there are skanim that are involved. You can't do it. And against my better judgment, she said, I was forced to start connecting the lines and say, okay, whatever happens, happens. And now you're telling me that they're 2 normal children? She calls out all the doctors and says, I want you to hear this story. I want you to hear this story. There's so many times in life we say, let it go, let it expire. My life is just so haywire. It's not haywire. It's a Chodesh hazeh lachem. The correction that has to be made, those 11 minutes that are off, was designed for you. And if you have the amunah that I have to do what I have to do and let the Rabbi Shalom do what he has to do, then you'll be amazed at what the Rabbi Shalom will do.